Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell. What a piece of work is a comedian. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty. In form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? It's a bit of fun, isn't it? I love talking to people in comedy about comedy. If you like to hear what they have to say as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode was described by Time Out London as one of the smartest, funniest sketch comedians, recommending her as one of the top 4 comedians to follow in 2022. She's a writer, actor and sketch comic whose online content has attracted millions of views. It's stand-up sketch and character comic, Claire Haus.
Hello.
Hi.
Hang on. There we go. Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Really good. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not at all.
So, yeah, if you're happy, we'll just jump in.
On. Yeah, whatever. I hope I have anything interesting to say.
I know you do. So tell me about what are your earliest recollections of comedy as a part of your life?
With most people, I think family stuff. So comedy was sort of, for my mom and my brother and me at least, like the kind of currency, I guess.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you could manage to come downstairs with a pillow stuffed up your person in a way that was particularly funny, that was a win. My mom used to have a great, like, she would laugh and stamp her feet. So that was kind of like that was a big win. So earliest recollections would probably be in the household. And then I was growing up mostly in Canada. And
Yes.
So we wouldn't have, like, there's a lot of British comedy because my mom was from London, but you would only get it in fat chunks. So it would be like TVO or PBS would play all of Mr. Bean in a day. Yeah. And so you just sit there and watch that, or all of Fawlty Towers, or all of, Keeping Up Appearances or whatever. So there was that. And and then beyond the English stuff, I think the first stand-up I remember, my parents would watch Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy, but that was kind of like, that was RoboCop. You weren't allowed to watch that when you were small. And then the first one that I remember watching sort of independently was Eddie Izzard. And then apart from that, it was like whatever was on, Ren and Stimpy, Beavis and Butthead, Kids in the Hall. Does anyone over here know what Kids in the Hall is?
Yeah.
That was, that was the Canadian sort of SNL.
Yeah.
Went to see that live when I was 7. That was pretty good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Was that the question? I can't remember.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was a while before you went into comedy. You were first and foremost in theatre, wasn't that right? I started like really desperately wanting to be an actress I lived close in Ontario. We lived pretty close to their Stratford Festival, right, which is also Stratford on the Avon, which is an amazing festival. And we would go there when I was small, and I was just like, oh my God, I love this, blah, blah, blah. So I was a bit of a theater nerd. And then it was, so I was doing drama camps and plays and stuff. And then I was about 15 before I got introduced to Second City, yes, which you know what that is, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I was teaching at a drama camp, and we some drama teacher had dropped out, and so we, in his place, got someone from Second City in Toronto, and he was like, "Oh, you need to come and do improv in Toronto," which was first sort of like improv sketchy thing, and then there was no turning back from there, except there was turning back. So how long were you doing comedy in Canada before you decided to make the move to the UK?
It's a real long and winding road. So probably what I should have done was, when I fell in love with comedy at 15, I should have just said that's what I was going to do. Instead, I decided to go do a degree in medieval history and art, and I started doing art. Basically, I was trying to avoid getting on stage because it made me nervous. So so I did like university, I did sketch troops, I did plays, and then in between then and now, because I'm getting up there, there's been a lot of stuff, but I did a master's degree in art. I lived in Colombia for a couple of years. And then it wasn't until I was sort of in my early 30s and discovered myself living in Latin America, debating whether or not to open a dog shelter. And I was like, I think I'm a little further from my dreams than I thought I was going to be. And then I was like, okay, well, I better go and see what's happening. And then even when I moved to London in 2018, stand-up was not really on the menu. Like, I still wanted to do comedy, but I was thinking like theater, sketch, whatever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I kind of got chucked on stage that I realized it was something that I could do.
Yeah. When you say chucked on stage,
I mean, a lot of people have that thing where if you're funny in conversation, they'll go, "Oh my God, you should do stand-up." And I always thought that's not how that works. Like, just because you could make someone laugh in conversation does not mean you can get up on stage. And so it was, I don't know, I found it too stressful. But then, since I was rejigging my entire life, it was suggested to me again. And because it's one of those, like, the thing I liked about stand-up is that in the initial phases, at least, there's no gatekeeper. So you can get up on stage and there's not, as there is in theater, a casting director saying, "You're too tall, you're too fat, you're too this, you're too that, you're too old, you're too blah." There's not like somebody telling you whether you're allowed to do the thing you're good at or not. So you just get up on stage and either be good or suck or both. And so I think that's what was appealing about it. But yeah, someone suggested it to me. It was suggested to me a few times over a period of about 6 months.
Right.
And then I finally did some random open mic and someone got me a spot, which was nice of them.
Yeah. So what was that first spot then? What was it like going on stage as a comic?
I think, what was it like? I think I was nervous. I think I was, I had the skills of an actor, which means like, you can be on stage, but I think those same skills from acting can be detrimental in terms of like a stand-up performance.
Right.
So the first set, by any stretch of the imagination, like, it went well for a first stand-up set at an open mic. But looking back, I'm just like, oh my God, I know that I was over-rehearsed and like not looking at the audience. And I know I didn't move the mic stand. So I'm kind of like retroactively going, oh my God, it was so shit. But actually, I left the stage going, oh my God, I'm a stand-up comedian, because people laughed. But yeah, so it was positive. If the first gig had been terrible, I wonder if I would have gone back and done more.
Yeah. So you thought of yourself as a comedian quite early on. Did you decide, I'm a comedian now and that's it, and then we'll see if I fulfill the role?
No. I wish I had done that. It was like all the signs were there, but I was just sort of, I was taking a lot of information on what I should do in my life. I have a German dad. I had an English mom who wanted things to be fine. And there was a lot of like, you need a plan A before you can have a plan B. And I took that, like, probably in retrospect, way too seriously. I should have just gone and been a janitor at Second City or something. So I think, it's easy to see in hindsight that it was always on the menu, but I think I'm a very indecisive person and I constantly feel like I'm staring into the void. And today I'm like, maybe I should just be, doing drywall. Maybe that's what I'm good at. Like, I don't know.
Or opening a dog shelter in America, maybe.
Well, exactly.
Do you think that you ever get comfortable with the idea that comedy is your A road?
I think until I have a fat bank account, which definitely is not happening. No, I don't think so. I'm not, I mean, Yeah, I don't think until you're sort of living off it.
Right.
Until you're full-time funny. No.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you kind of have to take seriously that it's a life sentence in order to do anything with it.
Yeah. A lot of comedians I talk to say that they just can't imagine doing anything else because it's such a huge part of their life, regardless of the income. And obviously the income you need to survive, but doing comedy is something that they love so much they can't envisage not doing it. Do you feel that way?
Part of me thinks that that's quite a privileged way of seeing it. Yeah. I know people like, I have another job because I live in London and rent's gone up 50% in 2 years. Like, it's not, I don't think there's any shame in having other pies in action. Yeah. But yeah, of course, like in a dream world, all I would like to be doing full time, 24 hours a day is thinking of ideas, writing ideas, filming ideas, testing them. Yeah. That's, of course. Yeah. Yeah. But then, the older you get, the more you're like, should I just get an accounting degree?
So when you started out becoming a comedian, was there anything that you kind of expected? Did anything surprise you about the experience or the industry that you were entering?
Let me think about this. I think, did I have preconceived notions? I didn't have preconceived notions. I think my preconceived notions in general, and maybe from Canada, were, because in Canada, there's like a real ceiling to, it feels like, and maybe I haven't been there for years, so maybe it's different now, but it felt like there was a real ceiling to what you could ever accomplish. Right. Things were happening miles and miles and miles away. And if ever you wanted to succeed, you'd have to go to LA or New York or anywhere else, which you couldn't do because you needed the visa and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I had this sense that like everything was very distant and it would take some kind of miracle to get anywhere. And in London, within the first year, you kind of realize, oh my God, no, everybody's here. And this is this tiny insular community. And sooner or later, if you just sort of have a last man standing mentality and you're good, or you're working, you'll meet everybody and there's kind of like opportunities arise. So I think that element of it, like the access, was surprising to me here in a good way. Preconceived notions, not really. I think from your first sort of year to year and a half in doing open mics and stuff, you kind of get the sense, again, if you're working at it all the time, that progression is really possible. Yeah. And then I think you can hit a ceiling at a certain point with the industry where you go, oh my God, oh yeah, there are actually gatekeepers at a certain level. Preconceived notions, not really. Yeah. No. Maybe no.
Some will say, oh, there's a fixed format, there's a line you kind of have to follow. You got to do the bringers and the open mics, and then you've got to do your 15, you got to do your 20, you got to do your split bill and so on. And then others will say, no, that's nonsense. You go in wherever you want to go and you just pick what you want to do, and then people will offer you things or you'll find things. I mean, what's your experience been in that regard?
I think like definitely in the early days, you just have to work as much as possible. Yeah. I luckily made a deal with myself, a sort of militaristic deal after the first one went well. Like, even though the first one had gone well, I was very aware that like it doesn't always go well. Yeah. And so I made a deal with myself that I would do 50 shows before making a decision as to whether I would continue. Which I did. But then, of course, by the time you've done 50, you're like so involved and obsessed with it that you will keep going. Yeah. Sorry, what was your question? Was it that there's a defined route or not?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think so. I think you can get, basically it's just the more you do early on, the better. Yeah. The more and I don't think I've particularly found my voice in stand-up yet. I think maybe my preconceived notion was that you would be able to find your voice within 2 or 3 years. And I'm realizing that probably it takes closer to 10.
Right. Yeah. I was going to ask you, actually, you kind of almost just answered it about having a style, a way of being a comic that you wanted to do. And what you're telling me now is that you're not there yet. You're still working on that.
No, I think for some people it's easier than others. Like there's like, it's so amazing to be a club comic, and it's such an incredible skill to do crowd work at a high level. However, there's a party element to that kind of comedy that like I like to watch, but it's not me. However, that's like, you can kind of be misguided, I feel, by listening to your audiences. Because I think naturally what I find funny and what I gravitate towards is a little bit left of center, a little bit alternative, but it's easy to get that beaten out of you by doing like bottomless booze nights and stuff where people just want the kind of humor that like you would see written on a toilet wall. And there's like amazing humor that could be written on a toilet wall, but I don't think that's where my strong suit is. So I think in some ways you can get sidetracked into being a little bit maybe mainstream or broad. And for some people that's where they thrive, and I don't think that's necessarily where I thrive. So I'm trying to find like what that middle ground is.
Did you find that the UK comedy experience culturally significantly different to the comedy culture in Canada?
Again, I was not really in stand-up in Canada.
Sure.
So I don't know. I don't really know what it's like there. It didn't even seem like a possibility when I was growing up. Like, I don't know if there was no culture or I just didn't see it. Sorry, what was the question? How is it here? I had some sense of like the level of writing and the quality of the comedy from my mom, which is what I was interested in, or like what felt sort of like familiar. But I maybe didn't understand fully the kind of like class system over here. That's quite severe. And I feel like you kind of need to live here a few years before you really by osmosis pick up the actual dynamics and kind of like coded language around class. So that's something that was surprising, because obviously that doesn't really exist in Canada so much. I think Canada has like English people, I will say this. The English people believe that they are modest. They are not modest. I have never been in a country where people can more comfortably, and this is a good thing, talk about their accomplishments and sort of sing for their supper. Like, it is people know how to do their own personal PR over here. And that's not the case in Canada. We really have tall poppy syndrome, I think, or at least did until I left. Small person syndrome, where you're just like, yeah, don't be anything other than humble, otherwise people will judge you. But I think here you kind of have to be this like, and I'm amazing at this, and I'm amazing at this, and I'm amazing at this, which I can't do it. It's not in my blood.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of comedy on stage is more self-deprecating, and yet off stage we're all telling everyone how wonderful we are.
I know. It's really like, I think maybe a misconception I had was that you can kind of be a lone wolf, that like, because of the lone wolf gladiatorial element of stand-up comedy, that you can make your way through the whole system by yourself. And that's really not true. You kind of need to be, it doesn't hurt to be a social butterfly, which I'm not. I'm like totally a introvert, an extroverted introvert. What do they call it? So yeah, I think there's that dynamic of like friendly networking, PR, being comfortable posting a picture of yourself in a bikini or whatever it is, that is still a mystery to me.
Yeah. let's talk a little bit about your online presence then. Tell me about the house special.
Oh, the house special. That's isn't that that's quite new. I think the house special is a response to the fact that I had a community guidelines ban on Instagram that lasted 2 years and they just refused to take it off. So none of my stuff was being seen by anybody. So it's a last ditch effort. Well, I don't know. Yeah, the house special is just the name I gave my new YouTube channel, which I have not given as much attention as I should have done. I'm starting to play around with the idea that maybe long form stuff is a bit funnier, or maybe like, I don't know. I don't really know. I'm still experimenting. So the house special is my YouTube channel. It's also the name of my TikTok channel, both of which are new. In lieu of Instagram, which I do not understand the algorithms over there or how you gain access beyond 10% of your followers. So online is where I do some character work and some maybe it'll be a joke or an idea that I haven't been able to work out on stage that I think would be better suited to video. And hopefully I will be doing more properly filmed sketches shortly. That's what the house special will be. That was a very rambling answer. It's where the videos are.
So, I mean, we're talking about sketch comedy, character comedy. Do you feel like when you're doing stand-up on stage and you're doing straight stand-up, is that a character? Are you playing yourself in those instances?
Really, I guess you're kind of yourself turned up to 11 or 12 ideally. I think yeah, that's probably what it is. So I'm hoping to actually put some, not character, but like bring like impressions and voices into the stand-up. So to kind of marry in between, because I feel like for a while when I was doing a lot more Instagram stuff and videos online, people would come to stand-up shows from there and think that I was going to do characters. And so I again haven't found the happy medium there.
Do you prefer playing other people? Yeah,
I think so. When stand-up's going really well, it's obviously really fun. But I think in the darkness of night, if you asked me which thing I think I'm better at, I would say probably characters. Yeah.
Is that the actor in you coming through?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. It's more fun. You can I feel much more able to like improvise as someone else.
Right.
Or in a different voice, like different voices. I love doing voices and they can open up like whole new vocabularies, I think, of character and stuff. So yeah, maybe I'm a frustrated character actor.
You mentioned improvising. How much do you improvise? And when you're doing, for example, your stand-up, is it mostly scripted? Do you play around with it in the moment? And similarly, when you're recording a character, do you go off script?
Usually if I'm recording a character, I will improvise until I find what I like, and then I'll record it as a script, essentially.
Right.
So that can be a long and frustrating process, or not long, but like an hour. On stage, I don't really improvise that much. And yeah, maybe that's just a level of comfort type of thing. I feel like I would need to be in sort of a room that really doesn't matter at all. To really go off piece, because I don't think I'm that funny when I'm improvising, as referenced by this podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mostly scripted.
Yeah. What about when you get like when you have hecklers and what have you? Do you close them down, or can you roll with it and improvise?
I can roll with it sometimes. Sometimes I will, go off piste. And I told a couple of guys who were talking that they looked like they were the sort of people who would die in a parkour accident. I think that was maybe a low point. People laughed and it was true, but I felt like and it's not my forte. I don't love watching crowd work, and I don't love doing it,
Right.
which maybe you need to do to be really effective. Yeah, I don't love it.
Yeah.
I would always, and as an audience member, I would always so much rather see the act.
Yeah.
Than it's kind of, I feel like it's sort of emblematic of what's happening with comedy as a whole today. It's like the shift of the dynamic is going towards the audience in a way where it's like they're participants in a way that I'm not sure it's healthy. Like audiences for sure forgot how to be audiences during the pandemic. Like they're different than they were before.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
And they want to be much more involved, I feel. And because of the dawn of the YouTube clip of like, such comedian destroys so-and-so, people feel like it's part of the dynamic.
Yeah.
But like, when people are like, you know, oh, what brought you here? What kind of a couple are you? I just think like, I would just so much rather hear about the person on stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's my own problem for that's again probably from theater. It's like, watch the show.
Yes.
You came for a show, watch the show.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%.
Someone recently got kicked out of, what was it, The Bodyguard in Manchester for singing along.
Yeah.
People are now just singing along and getting involved, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's wrong. It's so medieval.
Yeah. It's like you mentioned there about people making more and more the shift towards the audience interaction. And some comics' entire shows is based around the audience interaction.
Yeah.
And I understand an MC looking for a hook to sort of bring the audience energy up for the acts, but then specifically don't talk during the acts. So it's interesting that you mentioned it there about the audience is kind of expecting to be part of the show.
Yeah, and I think it's like also the dynamic online as well. It's like what we consider successful is stuff that reaches the most people and the broadest level of consensus. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not sure that's where the height of comedy exists. is in the thing that everybody gets immediately. I feel like that automatically strips out any kind of, or the majority of like idiosyncrasies that I would find funny.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. You've mentioned the pandemic, of course. We must. Tell me about your lockdown experience, because as you say, you started comedy in the UK in 2018. 2019, you were a finalist at So You Think You're Funny. You did an Edinburgh experience with Josh Weller and Susie Priest, and
research.
And then 2020. So what happened next?
Yeah, I had nice gigs lined up. Everything was about to go really well. And then as far as like physically enjoying lockdown, I have kind of a militaristic martial arts sort of German background. I quite like having restrictions. You know what I mean? I like having no options. And I like I enjoyed functionally lockdown of like not being able to go anywhere. You do not need to socially interact. And I put out a lot of, online content at that time. Mm-hmm. So I functionally sort of enjoyed it. Looking back, I think it was not great for the career, obviously, because it took a lot to get back. You kind of had to work your way back up to where you were, which I'm not sure I did. I think it derailed everything. It was kind of depressing for the industry, where the industry that didn't get the funding, and to say it had no impact would be bullshit. But I personally, as a human, was fine with it.
Yeah.
How was yours?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I had the time of my life. It was beautifully sunny.
Project?
No, I did nothing. I sat in the garden. I drank rum in the middle of the day. I was in a hammock. It was glorious.
How do you have enough space for a hammock? What the hell is this?
I have a garden.
Unbelievable.
Disgusting.
This is
my white male privilege.
Central London living. I was like, you have a garden. How dare you?
In the suburbs, living the dream.
Yeah.
I've completely thrown myself now off. I was going to say, oh yeah, lockdown. So what about Zoom? So I saw you do a Comedy Cabin, I think, a couple of times. So how was your Zoom experience?
I think you probably saw the sum total of it. I mean,
2 nights at Comedy Cabin.
I didn't do very much. I did a couple, and then I found that, like, man, I'm being so negative in this interview. I'm not like this all the time. I think like the distance between the joke and the laugh and like that kind of functional stuff. I just thought, I don't know how much I'm learning here, but it was fun doing those kind of like, and I think Comedy Cabin was sort of character comedy a little bit. So yeah, I preferred filming things and writing things during that time rather than doing Zoom stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned also your 2019 doing So You Think You're Funny. So what about competitions? How do you feel about doing on the day contests like gong shows and things like So You Think You're Funny contests and awards?
I've never done a gong show because I felt like it was a waste of an evening.
Yes.
Because to go and use an evening and do 30 seconds and then be dumped off just seems like, why wouldn't you just go do a show and do 10 or however long?
Yeah.
So You Think You're Funny was I think it was the only one I did. I know I have applied for a few. And I don't think I even made it to the first round of like BBC New Comedian, like not even the live thing. So yeah, it was weird. It was like, So You Think You're Funny just shot pretty quickly, and I didn't really do any after that. But I think they're really good. I think they're fun, and I think people should. Basically, my take is, if you do really well, that's fantastic. Do them because why not? And if you don't get anywhere in them, don't take it personally, because not doing well has nothing to do with anything. Doing well is great.
Yeah. And also I mentioned your Edinburgh Split the Bill with Josh Weller and Susie P. So how was that experience?
Loved it. It was great. We were lucky enough to be in the Counting House, which is central, and at an evening, like 9:30 at night, which was amazing. And so we just sold out immediately, which is not everybody's experience there. So I had kind of a golden experience for a few weeks there. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah. So you've not yet returned to Edinburgh?
No, I think life took over a little bit. So yeah, there's been like other elements of life flaring up.
Yeah.
Which have kind of detracted from the writing. And I don't see the point of going if you're not going with something that's like incredible. And increasingly, I'm not sure, it costs so much. Like, I think just morally and ethically, I'm not sure what the integrity is of like scrounging everything you have together to go up to this place for a month and just unload. It just seems like such a gamble. And part of me is like, well, yeah, if you're going to spend 10 grand, like, why not just make a movie or, do something else with the money? So I think I get caught in these webs of like possibility and a void of like, well, yeah, but you could do this, but you could also do this, but you could do this. And then I end up like not doing any of them. But yeah, I think obviously Edinburgh is fantastic for working every single day, networking, making friends with comedians, building an audience up there. Like, it's such a cool thing. And I'm not 100% sure how it has lasted through the pandemic and what the dynamics are, because I think they've also changed since I was last there. And I see people who are now going up for their debuts who are like my cohort.
Yes.
And And you know from like last July that you'll be going this year, and you're already working on the show essentially. So
Yeah.
and you kind of most of the people will also have like industry buy-in essentially, and like agents and people kind of strapping them into the roller coaster, going, okay, this is what we're doing. And so it's a whole. Again, that's something that I didn't necessarily realize when I was up there in 2019. That was like, okay, that kind of behind the scenes thing, you kind of have a sense as a newbie, like you're going up and like anyone could be the newcomer, but it's kind of, I don't know.
Now, as a comedian, are you able to go out and watch comedy and disassociate from it? Or do you use the comedian mindset take over?
I can definitely still enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I will then think about it afterwards in terms of structure and stuff. But I went to see, do you know who James Austin Johnson is?
Yes.
He's like such a huge talent, and the impressions are, I found that really inspiring. So I really enjoyed the show. And then I left going, oh yeah, you can do voices in your show and it can work. And, there's always, your comedy brain will always be ticking, not with what can I use from this show, but like, what does this tell me about what works and what doesn't? Yeah. So I don't think a comedian can ever turn their comedy brain off.
Yeah.
Not me anyway. It's probably like a sommelier having table wine. And you're just like, I can enjoy this, but there's something wrong with it.
Oh, I like that. No one said that before. So what so far then have been your best experiences and your worst experiences?
Gosh, I can't really remember.
I'm talking about comedy here, not like significant trauma. I'm not your therapist.
Best experience. I mean, like, obviously just functionally, like doing a stand-up sketch show was really fun because
yes,
it's incredible as someone of any level to arrive and they've created the whole scene, like they've built your sketch in the real world. That's exciting. Yeah. As a gig, also exciting. I mean, in terms of like, I don't think you can ever beat like super early gigs that went well, where you're just like, oh my God, and you get really a bigger endorphin rush probably than you do later. So I don't know if I can really be specific. I remember the semifinals of So You Think You're Funny being so fun because it's a great audience and it's Edinburgh and it feels really big. And then obviously if you win, which I did at that time, it was like, oh my God, it just makes it really fun. Top Secret, there have been some really fun gigs there. I love that element of like doing two shows within half an hour of each other. Small and big room. That's really fun. I'm trying to even remember. I don't have a great memory. I'm just trying to remember when people laughed. Bad gigs are bad, but they're also funny because like I remember going up to somewhere in sort of like zone 8 and traveling this huge distance for something that someone said was going to be a big show, and then it was in the back of a pub and there were two guys with like ZZ Top beards just sitting in the back who just did not want to hear anything. Worst gig. I had one really bad gig that was a great opportunity that I definitely screwed up. It was too early. It was like in 2019. I'd only been going for a couple months. And I got invited to do my first, it was like a big theater in Deal. And it was 200 people, I think, or something like that. But it was a cabaret show. So it was like drag performers and dancing. And I was the comedian. And that was the first time I'd ever been in a lineup that wasn't just all comedians. And I just didn't know yet that you need to kind of get people on board with stand-up before just launching into it. So I went out and was just probably not great. And just died on my ass for about 10 minutes. And then the host of the show had seen my Instagram characters and was like, well, he'd been trying to egg me on towards doing one of my characters on stage, which I was like, I don't do that. That's not really what I've been doing. So I ended up with this kind of like Frankenstein monster creature of a set where I went out and did 10 minutes of stand-up, left the stage, put a wig on, came back on as a German, and then was just like rambling as a German art critic for about 15 minutes, which actually went better than the stand-up. But I left there and was just like, oh my God, that was, you know, there are certain times as a comic where you're like, that was an opportunity. And I did not rise to the occasion. And I got paid too, more than I had been paid before. So I was like, I just had this overwhelming guilt, and it was fine. And it was like a massive learning experience to go, okay, if you're in a lineup that's not comedians, these are the things you need to do.
Yeah.
This is how you relate on a stage that's that big. Like, it's those painful ones that you learn a lot from. But yeah, that one I think sticks out as something that didn't go that well.
Yeah. You mentioned there about learning important lessons. What are the other key lessons? What philosophies have you developed that you take forward with you?
Philosophies, I don't know about philosophies. I could think overall just like being honest, specific, present in the room.
Yeah.
Not playing into, and I'm still dealing with how to navigate this, as I mentioned at the beginning, like how not to just end up on, obviously no topic is hacky, but let's face it, some topics are hacky. If 5 people in an evening get up and say, hey, who's on Tinder? Like, it's, you know, I think finding what is really specific to you that you were passionate about and then diving into that, probably really important. Philosophies, I don't know. Go with the flow. I think I don't know. My philosophies are limited. It's a life. I think my philosophy is like, it's a life sentence, so don't rush, probably, which is why I'm not rushing to Edinburgh or anywhere else. It's like, I'd rather something be good before it's done. Yeah. This kind of modern thing of like publish or perish, which has gone from the academic world into the online world. I just don't think maybe it is a recipe for success for some people. But yeah, I just think the dynamic is a bit off. Sorry, again, I've gone off on a complete tangent. Philosophy, write every day, do as many shows as you can, but don't stress out if you can't do 6 shows a week. It is possible to do too many shows. Be self-critical without being self-loathing, and that's it.
Yeah. So TV then, theatre, stage stand-up, self-filming. Where are you most comfortable?
Probably stage and filming.
Yeah.
I think stand-up, what makes stand-up fun is the fact that it's a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. Right. But I do feel like I've moved. This is gonna seem like it's a tangent, but I will come back to why it's not. I've moved in my life 48 times.
Wow.
So from childhood, moving around back and forth to Canada, and just from house to house, from country to country. Yeah. I've moved a lot and flown a lot. Carbon footprint, bad. Never going anywhere again, don't worry. And I'm also someone who's like constantly worried that they're not doing the right thing, with a sense of urgency about it. Like, did you watch the end of Succession?
I did not, no.
Tom Wamsgans, who's a character in it, he has a speech at the end that's like, I worry constantly about my personal safety and threats to everything. And it's similar to that, where I constantly think that I'm not quite doing the right thing. So I think I find fantastic about being on a stage for an hour is like, there's nowhere else you're meant to be. You know that these are the squares, like this is your audience that you have now. You can't improve it. They're already here. And there's something about these limitations that I find quite comfortable, that you can't possibly make a better decision because here you are for an hour, if that makes any sense at all. And kind of like the stage is yours. You own the stage for that hour, and you can do with it what you want, and you can make of it what you can. And I think there's a level of that I find comforting, weirdly. Maybe.
That's fascinating, because we talk about people who are like feeling limited and restricted and wanting, freedom of expression, and especially a post-pandemic, everyone wants freedom of movement, and I want freedom, and you're shaking your head at me. No one wants that. That's
no. I was thinking. I was actually writing about this morning that I maybe I'm going to do stand up a bit about like how much better. Obviously, in the Middle Ages, some things are bad. Right? You have no dental care. I personally would have been locked in an attic because I have terrible eyesight. But the limitations, like you didn't have to work, you didn't have to make any choices. Like there's one type of breakfast that you're going to have forever. That's it. You don't have to think about it. You have one outfit. You don't have to think about it. You have one tier of society, you have one job. You're going to till the field, and that's what you're going to do forever. I like that. Limitations breed genius.
Think your way out of the box, I guess. Nice. Do you still get, or do you get nerves, anxiety before you perform?
I had terrible stage fright, but it does go away a little bit. Although I think now, because of various factors, I'm sort of taking, and this is another possibly philosophy, I think it's okay to take a little hiatus and like take some time off to breed inspiration. So I've been off stage for a couple of months, mostly. And so the nerves really build up again. It's not like riding a bike where like suddenly everything's fine. Obviously it's that way with like your stand-up skills kind of come back. But I find that it's sort of like, it's like, I don't even know what it would be. Like it builds up. So if you're doing shows 2 or 3 times a night or every night, then the nerves are minimal. And as soon as it becomes more than 5 days, then I have them again.
So how can we find out about you? How can we find out where we can come and see you?
Usually I will post things on Instagram. Or if someone tags me in something, I'll post it there, or Twitter, but I'm not really active on Twitter. Frequently, if it's a nice show, I'll put it on my website in advance, which, as you well noted, I have not been doing. But yeah, theoretically, on the socials is where you should find out.
So finally, my last question, in line with the title of the show, can you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
I think I'm going back to life sentence. It's a life sentence.
Claire, thank you so much. It's been fantastic talking with you. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks a lot.